In fantasy drafts, here's the top 15 tight ends I'm ranking heading into the fantasy season right before draft time for fantasy owners. The first guy, who else would it be than Travis Kelce of the Kansas City Chiefs? So Travis Kelce, a monster season last year, and he's been a mainstay for this offense and fantasy owners now the last 5 or 6 years here. Now with Tyreek Hill out of town, I think more targets are going to come Kelce's way, believe it or not, and he'll have a bigger season this year than last. So last season, 92 catches, 1,125 receiving yards, and 9 receiving touchdowns with a fumble loss. So Kelce, he's going to get more receptions, I believe, this season. Definitely more targets. I know they added Juju Smith-Schuster is this Kansas City Chief team, and Valdez-Scantling, but I still think at least 30-40% of those targets that Tyreek Hill's leaving behind, they're going to go Kelce's way here. And I know he might get double-teamed at times and stuff, and let Smith-Schuster or Valdez-Scantling defenses are going to try to beat him. But I think Kelce has another good season. And right now he's going second round of fantasy drafts. And projections for him, 1,040 receiving yards, 83 receptions, and 8 touchdowns. So that would be a little bit of a down year compared to last season. But I think he gets 10 touchdowns and close to 1,200 yards this season. The next tight end's Mark Andrews at number 2 of the Baltimore Ravens. So what a monster season last year here for Andrews. Over 100 catches with 107 catches, 1,361 receiving yards, and 9 receiving touchdowns with 2 two-point conversions. So Mark Andrews, he's a monster playmaker. And another thing here, Hollywood Brown's gone over there in Baltimore. And I think more targets are going to go his way as well. But the projections are a little low compared to last season. I don't think he's going to get 1,300 yards. That's just out of control for a tight end is Mark Andrews. But I think 1,200 yards with 9 to 10 touchdowns. And the projections for him, 1,085 total yards, 84 receptions, and 9 touchdowns. I think the receptions, though, will be 95 to 100 range. But the other numbers should be pretty accurate like they are for his projections. So I got him in number 2. Number 3, Darren Waller of the Las Vegas Raiders. So Waller here was between him and George Kittle in my ranking system. But I believe Waller's got the better quarterback. And now with Davante Adams over there as well, the field's going to open up even more. Obviously, Derek Carr is more of a pocket quarterback than the Trey Lance, even though for fantasy football, I got Lance a couple rankings higher than Derek Carr. So last season for Waller, an injury-plagued year and a struggled season, 55 catches only, 665 receiving yards, and only 2 touchdowns. But the projections this season, 975 receiving yards, 80 catches, and 5 touchdowns, which obviously would be a big season here for a Darren Waller. The middle of the field's going to open up more, where you got a Davante Adams and Hunter Renfrow on the both sides of the receiving core, which is great for this Vegas Raider team. And Waller, this guy runs like a wide receiver, and the athleticism and the playmaking ability. So right here, it's going to be a bounce-back season for him. Right now, he's going 4th to 5th round in fantasy drafts. But I like him at number 3. Number 4, George Kittle of the San Francisco 49ers. So Kittle last season was healthy for the majority of the year, and he had a good year, no doubt. 71 catches, 910 receiving yards, 6 receiving touchdowns, and a fumble loss. But right here, George Kittle, I think the numbers are going to take a little bit of a hit, even though his projections are pretty much the same as last season. But with Trey Lance at quarterback, he's not much as a pocket passer. Obviously, as a Jimmy Garoppolo, Lance is going to look to run a few times this season more than obviously Jimmy G ever did this year. And that's going to take some of the running away from his passing. So this season, the projections, 955 receiving yards, 70 catches, and 5 touchdowns. That'll be a solid season here for George Kittle. But I think more of 700, 800 receiving yards with 5 or 6 touchdowns here for Kittle. But health's the main concern, and that's why, to me, I took Waller over him with his quarterback positioning. And I know both guys have been injury-prone, but Waller's at least been more healthy throughout his career than a George Kittle. Number 5, Kyle Pitts of the Atlanta Falcons. So Kyle Pitts here, big-time tight end coming out of the NFL draft last season here. Last year with Matt Ryan, it was a pretty solid rookie season. He didn't score touchdowns, only 1 on the year, but 68 catches, 1,026 receiving yards with the touchdown, like I mentioned here, for Kyle Pitts. And this season, Marcus Mariota is going to be the quarterback, with obviously Matt Ryan traded to the Indianapolis Colts in the offseason. So Kyle Pitts, his projections, 1,195 receiving yards, 82 catches and 6 touchdowns. I don't know if we're going to see all that from him. Marcus Mariota last season, he was a gadget guy as a backup quarterback for the Raiders, and we really haven't seen him throw a football in a few seasons. He was a bust with the Tennessee Titans as a second pick overall in that draft many seasons ago, was Marcus Mariota. And right here, this Falcon offense, I think, is going to be worse in terms of getting the football down the field. And they're a rebuilding team. I think Mariota, he'll start the first half of the season, and then second half, they'll go with the younger guys over there in Atlanta. But right now, Kyle Pitts, I've seen on some websites, he's the third-ranked tight end, but I got him at number 5 here. I just think with Waller and Kittle situation, it's a little better at the quarterback position. And obviously, those guys are veterans as well and could have better seasons easily than a Kyle Pitts with his quarterback situation and defenses zeroing in on Pitts with not many other options besides Drake London in that passing game over there in Atlanta. Number 6, Dalton Schultz of the Dallas Cowboys. So a monster breakout year it was last season for Schultz, and it got him the franchise tag over there in Dallas. And right now, he's easily the number 2 option in the passing game with Amari Cooper gone to Cleveland, Cedric Wilson signing with Miami, and CeeDee Lamb and him, the only 2 guys standing. Jalen Tolbert's a rookie. I'm not expecting much out of him. And James Washington and Michael Gallup were both out as well with their injuries. So right here, last season for Schultz, 78 catches, 808 receiving yards, 8 receiving touchdowns, and a 2-point conversion. This season, the projections, 855 receiving yards, 85 catches, and 8 touchdowns. I think it's going to go down just a bit here, 650, 700 receiving yards, and probably 6 or 7 touchdowns. He's a great red zone threat. And like I mentioned, there's not a lot of options right now on this Cowboy offense. We don't know for sure when Gallup's coming back. James Washington, he's going to miss probably at least the first month of the season here. So right now it's going to be CeeDee Lamb and Dalton Schultz for this Dallas Cowboy team. And I think he's a guy that could easily finish a top 6 at tight end, especially where they're going to force feed him, I believe, over there in Dallas. But also there could be a possibility he was a one-hit wonder, is Dalton Schultz. But right now I got him locked in at number 6 at tight end. Number 7, Zach Ertz of the Arizona Cardinals. So right here, I know Ertz is banged up with a calf injury, but I think they're being precautious with him. He's been out now with the calf injury since August 4th, already pretty much 20 days ago, 3 weeks ago here. So Ertz last season, he wanted out of Philadelphia. He pretty much needed out with the emergence of Dallas Goedart, and he finished well with Arizona, 74 catches, 763 receiving yards, and 5 touchdowns. And this season here, I think he could put up similar numbers, even better. Right now, DeAndre Hopkins is suspended, so more targets are going to be gathered around over there, obviously in Arizona. I know they traded for Hollywood Brown. They got A.J. Green, Redalde Moore, Christian Kirk left as well. So a lot of targets left out there on the table in Arizona, where Hopkins suspended and Kirk going to Jacksonville in free agent. And Zach Ertz, he's a good playmaker. He's a good red zone threat. And he's a great route runner with a good IQ. So right here, I think he's going to have a good season in Arizona. And I got him in number 7. Number 8, his former teammate, Dallas Goedart of the Philadelphia Eagles. So these guys were a toss-up as well at the tight end position here for me. But Zach Ertz is a veteran and a little bit more consistent, I believe, than Goedart. And Goedart right now going in fantasy drafts, 6 of the 7th round. So last year, a very good season for Goedart. 56 catches, 830 receiving yards, 4 receiving touchdowns, and a 2-point conversion. His projections this season, 860 receiving yards, 61 catches, and 5 touchdowns. So Goedart, some games last season, he disappeared. Consistency, like I mentioned, he needs to show more. And this Eagle offense is loaded now. You add A.J. Brown to the offense, which is going to open it up in the middle of the field here for a Dallas Goedart. And you got a Devonta Smith entering his 2nd season in the NFL. Obviously, Heisman Trophy winner a few years ago in college football. And you got Jalen Hurts, who's a dual threat of running the football and stretching the field down as well. So this Eagle team's going to have a good year here, I believe, in the NFC East. And that division's weak on defense. The Commanders' D isn't good. New York Giants, their defense hasn't been good for years. And the Cowboys' secondary, I don't think is that good at all. So right here, Dallas Goedart easily could be a top 8 tight end. And it wouldn't be surprising to me if he's even top 5 as well this season. Number 9, T.J. Hockenson of the Detroit Lions. I'm not big on Hockenson this season. I think he's going to be a bust. And right now, he's gone down his draft ranking, 7th, 8th round. most fantasy drafts he's going. But these other tight ends are more consistent. And obviously the quarterback play is the issue with me. Jared Goff, he don't really stretch the field, even though we saw Amon St. Brown have a monster second half of the season. But last season, Hockenson was a bust considering he was a top 3-4 tight end going into the year. 61 catches for TJ Hockenson, 583 receiving yards, 4 touchdowns, and a 2-point conversion. This season, 770 receiving yards, 66 catches, and 4 touchdowns they're projecting here for Hockenson. And I think that's a pretty decent number, not too crazy of a bump up last season here for Hockenson, but I don't think he's going to be consistent. This Detroit offense has been a mess besides St. Brown and Swift last season here. And Jared Goff, he's not getting time back there. The offensive line is poor, and you don't stretch the field. But right now, I'm going to keep Hockenson at number 9. Number 10, Dawson Knox of the Buffalo Bills. So what a breakout season it was last year for Dawson Knox. And this Bill offense, sky's the limit for them. They got so many weapons, and the best quarterback entering the season right now in Josh Allen. So last year here for Knox, 49 catches, 587 receiving yards, 9 receiving touchdowns, and a 2-point conversion. And he missed 4 or 5 games as well with a broken hand, is Dawson Knox. If he played a full season, we could only imagine what type of year he has. This season, the projections here for him, 615 receiving yards, 51 catches, and 8 touchdowns. I do think his numbers are going to drop a little bit. Gabriel Davis emerged last season in the playoffs, won an insane ball game for 8 catches, 201 yards, and 4 touchdowns. He's going to be a vocal point. Stephon Diggs, he's a stud and a first-round pick this season. And Jamison Crowder, that's a good veteran to add to the offense as well as a slot receiver. So this Bill team has many weapons. And adding James Cook in the NFL draft as well, a good rookie who can catch the ball out of the backfield as well. So Knox, he's going to have a good year, no doubt about it. He's easily a top 10 tight end on this list here. But he's a guy that his numbers might take a little bit of a hit. But I like him at 10 this season. Number 11, Pat Friermuth of the Pittsburgh Steelers. So Friermuth's second half of the season last year was his coming out party. And he helped a lot of fantasy owners. Last year, 60 catches, 497 receiving yards, 7 receiving touchdowns, a big red zone target, 2-point conversion, and a fumble loss. So this season, they're projecting him pretty lower. Not much of an upgrade. 575 receiving yards, 58 catches, and 7 touchdowns. We'll see who's going to be the quarterback over there in Pittsburgh. Between Trubisky and Pickens, I think it's going to be both these guys at some point this season here. But I think right now, Friermuth, his projections are a little low. I think 700, 800 yards is definitely a possibility here for him. Trubisky, we know he's turnover prone, but we also know he's a guy that could get the ball down the field and try to force it to his playmakers. I think Friermuth, he's going to get a head start this season where he's going to be the starter. Last season, Eric Ebron was in the way. But Muth is going to be the guy from day one this season here at tight end. And I like him a lot. And number 11 is a good spot for Friermuth. And right now in fantasy drafts, he's going anywhere from 10th to the 12th round. Number 12, Gerald Everett of the Los Angeles Chargers. So I'm big on Gerald Everett this season. And he's a guy that you could get in the very latter part of your fantasy draft. Right now, Jared Cook's gone. No one signed him to a deal. And Everett last season, towards the end of the year with Seattle, he came on. And now to go to a Charger offense with Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Austin Eckler, to be the 4th or 5th option over there where defenses aren't going to be focusing on Everett. He could work the middle of the field, and he's a big red zone threat and a guy who could play like a wide receiver. That's how quick and physical he is as well. Last season, 48 catches, 478 receiving yards, 4 touchdowns, and 2 fumble losses. So right now, Gerald Everett, he's definitely a sleeper for me entering the season at the tight end position. And I think he easily could crack the top 12 with the offense he's in and the ability he has. We've seen him have big games throughout his career in his Rams days and even with Seattle last season towards the end of the year. He had some better games than Metcalf and Lockett at some point. So right now, not many people looking at Everett. I've been big on him all preseason here, and I got him at number 12. Number 13, Mike Gesicki of the Miami Dolphins. So right now, this Dolphin team, they got a lot of speed guys on this roster. But Mike Gesicki, I thought, was pretty solid last season in Miami. Him and Tua had a pretty good rapport, 73 catches, 780 receiving yards, only 2 receiving touchdowns and a 2-point conversion. And I know reports have come out that he's going to be less of a focal point. But obviously, when you got a Tyreek Hill, a Jalen Waddle over there, signing Cedric Wilson and a Chase Edmonds and a Sony Michel, that's a lot of guys on this Miami Dolphin offense. But I still think Gesicki could be a top 13 tight end. He's a big target in the middle of the field, a guy who could play like a wide receiver. And I know it's a little far-fetched, but he's had comparisons over the last few seasons to a guy like a Travis Kelce, even though obviously I'm not saying he's on that level, but we've seen flashes from him. We've seen some big games from him. And last season, he had 14, 15 points a week for a couple weeks in a row. So Mike Gesicki is a late-end tight end, 12th, 13th round of your fantasy draft. I would be comfortable, actually, with him in my starting lineup. Number 14, Tyler Higbee of the Los Angeles Rams. So Tyler Higbee, he's been an up-and-down tight end over the last few seasons. I know he had a breakout 3 years ago for this Ram team, but last year, mediocre year, 61 catches, 560 receiving yards, and 5 touchdowns. So this Ram offense is loaded. They're ready to go and put that title on the line and try to win once again here, the Super Bowl champs, the Rams here. So Higbee this season, a guy you could also get in the 12th, 13th round of most fantasy drafts, and a guy I would be comfortable with as well. Not as comfortable as the other guys I just mentioned, but right here, if he's your tight end in a 12-team league, are you really going to complain about it? Because he could have some ball games where he's going to get 12, 15 fantasy points, and at the tight end position, you don't need that much, to be honest, especially if you're in a heavy wide receiver or a flex type of league. You're not really worried about the tight end position that much, and you drafted 11th, 12th round, and these guys at the back end here could put up similar numbers from the guys in the 8th to the 10th range here. So right here, I like Higbee at number 14, at the 15th and final tight end I like this season. Irv Smith Jr. of the Minnesota Vikings. So Irv Smith Jr., he's a guy I've been raving about over the last few seasons. I know last season was a lost season for him with the injury, but this guy's got all the tools. He's in a major offense, and he's in an offense where teams are not going to actually roll coverage to him. And now with Tyler Conklin gone as well, going to the New York Jets in free agency, he's the number one guy. I know he's still banged up with a thumb injury here, but he's going to be back on the field any day now, is Irv Smith Jr. And I think this could be a breakout season for him. Right now, he's not going drafted in some fantasy leagues, and I honestly would be comfortable with him as well as my starting tight end in a 12-team league. So all these guys on this top 15, I would be comfortable with starting in a 12-team league, maybe even a 10, depending this season. So that's the top 15 tight ends I'm ranking here, heading into fantasy drafts this year and trying to help fantasy owners entering their drafts in the next few days or couple weeks, whenever their drafts are.